I was saying, I never put exactly enough chairs in case we get a low turnout, but we always get good turnout. So after 19 years, I've been running the school. I'm still thinking it's from watching Mary Tyler Moore and her bad parties. Remember? I was saying, okay, no one's going to come. And people always come. So thank you for coming on this nice day. So I'm going to introduce Dylan. I was just reading your bio. Yes. Yes. So I met Dylan in 1999. He was a student of mine. So here we are. And I see you graduated from the Victoria College of Art in 2000. And then I was surprised to see that you have a BFA in photography from Concordia with great distinction. See, I have a BFA from Concordia just with distinction, and I never knew that there was a great distinction. And I also thought, well, since Dylan, we've been friends and colleagues for a while, I thought I'll wear something that has a lot of bling. There's beads and things if you look really close. So, and then yes, back to your accolades. So, completed an MFA with honors in the Media, Art and Design course at the Bauhaus University. And he's done a lot of really interesting things, living in Montreal, Germany, working for some famous German artists. And I think quite a few of you know Dylan. So, and he's one of the funnest people ever. Sorry to put the pressure on. But he's also...
He writes some jokes. So.
No, and he's been teaching at Visa for the last year and a half.
Yeah.
So, and that's been really great to have you as a teacher. Yeah. And just fun to see your whole progression and how mature you've become. Okay, well, anyways, Dylan's going to talk about his work, and I'll be asking questions, and other people can ask questions. Sort of our artist talks are somewhat informal, and we encourage people to ask questions if you have anything to say. Come on in. Okay, so.
That's it? Can I start?
Oh, you can start.
More
Yes.
embarrassing
Oh, yes.
Well, it's really nice to see all of you, familiar faces, new faces. Thanks for having me, Wendy, and thanks to the school for letting me have the show. Where do I start? I'm going to probably take like a slightly formal and then go off script approach to this whole thing. I have some notes. They're sort of notes for myself in terms of what the paintings mean to me and what I've been thinking, and I think maybe that's interesting for you. I can talk about process, but we can also do that like in the question period if you have questions about how these paintings came to be. It's mostly new paintings. There are some older ones from previous series that still work with my sort of bigger theme, my art statement. I am refining something new in this new work, and I'm heading in a new direction, and I'm not completely sure what that is yet, so that's the notes. But yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I think what I first wanted was for you, my audience, whether it's you or wherever these paintings end up going, I wanted you to see the portraiture at first, pretty much so I can just tell you that it's not portraiture, because I'm sassy like that sometimes. and I'm splitting hairs a bit, making a bit of a joke because clearly it is portraiture, but it's not portraits of people. It's portraits of characters, maybe, archetypes. They're all basically derived from stills from films, so they're embedded in a kind of action or in a story. And as I'm researching, looking for images, working on one painting and thinking about the future paintings, if something passes by my eye, when I'm either hunting, like actively hunting through films, or passively just watching something to relax, I will take a screenshot, I'll grab that moment and then work from there. So I have thousands upon thousands of screenshots. I've been doing this for well over a decade. Yeah, so what do I mean by it's not portraiture? Oh, perfect. High thoughts. I love it.
Only on Visa.
So yeah, so there's a sort of one thing we can run with is that there is the classical and the contemporary present in these paintings. So classical painting, classical subject matter, classical portraiture, and there's something contemporary because of the pool of come on in, Chris. Getting you. All good. Yeah, so the pool of films that I'm drawing from is all, all through the ages. I think that one's from the 50s, some are very recent from the last couple of years, 80s goes on.
This is false, everyone. I'm sorry. But he's.
Very excited right now.
I said there would be a song done, but it was going to be a dog.
Yeah.
I'll just get a chair. Sorry.
Yeah, so the crux of it is like, it's portraiture is, there's this historical idea that portraiture is supposed to represent the likeness of a person, or maybe capture a little bit of their internal life, or it comes from the French word portrait. It's supposed to somehow portray this person. A person used to sit for portraiture, like a model would sit, so it's passive. My models are pulled out from action. They're not passive, they're in motion. There's a whole narrative structure around them. There's a crew, there's lights, camera, all that stuff. So it's different. And then over the last few months of, producing these paintings, I looked up the word portrait, and the etymology comes from the Latin protraho, which is to drag. I drag, that's what it means. And I know there's some portrait painters in the room, and maybe you'll agree with me, but I am more in line with that definition than with this passive portrayal idea, because when you're painting a portrait, the likeness is actually moving, it's pushing and pulling, it's slippery, it's moving all around the canvas, and I'm dragging things into the light or pushing them back into the shadow. It's a constant sort of exercise in optics and vision, and so I like that definition. I also like that I'm dragging these images out of a narrative script or some sort of timeline. Time-based media, if you want. So yeah, me being a bit sassy, they're portraits, and no, they're not. At the same time. Just catch up here. Yeah. Okay. So then, getting these paintings hung last week, getting them out of the studio. My personal reaction is that as soon as they were hung, I was they're very quiet. There's some weird stillness that I didn't really register with, I have walls of paintings and I can't isolate them from each other like I can here. But there's a solemnity. There's some sort of the Walter Benjamin idea of an aura. There's some sort of like thing surrounding the painting that isn't just the painting itself. And maybe this is a personal, viewpoint, but I was struck by their peacefulness and their solitude. And then the one thing I did know was that as I was painting them, I was really focusing on isolating these archetypes and these characters. I wanted them to be totally internalized in their own worlds. There's no real attempt to paint a figure, with the exception of the one that's tied up in an electric lasso. There's not often hands, there's not any context, there's not a huge attention to a background. So I was really trying to pull these characters out of this filmic base and then whittle down these moments to contemplation, isolation, some sort of internal reflection or internal world going on, and hopefully that's enough of a story to make you want to look at the paintings. So that was the challenge that I set for myself, and I think like sensing the silence of them, it's like, okay, it's working, some of this is working. Like I said, this is all sort of fairly fresh and trying to figure it out. So again, sort of splitting off, there's the classical and the contemporary. There is this portraiture, non-portraiture. Then there's the personal side would be that I moved back from Germany, found myself quite isolated, just lots of time in the studio, alone. And that must be in the work too. Like there's some reason that I'm sort of paying so much attention, so many hours to a single individual, or the back of an individual, and trying to like imbue that person with some sort of meaning, some sort of like story. Like that. What else? Oh yeah. Okay. So got the personal. We've got these streams that I'm running. Then there is the title of the show, the Filmic Eye. So I always have a kind of social commentary side to my work. And in this case, I would say it's probably the way that we see figures, people, portraits of people, is to kind of connect our humanness to them. But these are shells of people. These are characters. These are actors. So what I'm interested in is this eye for film that we have sort of overrides our eye for people. Well, maybe that's too strong. I don't know if it overrides, but it certainly does in this work. Without getting too complicated, I'd say that, well, I have to go back to the monoptical quality of film. It's flat, it's from one eye, it's not binocular. I've always been interested in that, which is why some of my paintings feature some person with one eye, and that's my inside joke to myself. On the back is the nucleation. So the camera flattens the picture plane. Anything that's screened flattens the picture plane. We have two eyes. We're so used to seeing with this one monoptical flattened space that it's just normal for us. So this is like my highfalutin conceptual angle, but it has pushed me through 2 decades of painting at this point. It's like I'm constantly looking for why we imbue something flat with meaning, why we see the dimensions in something, like even if they're not there. The 3 small pictures at the front on the right were dimensional. They were created in space with depth, but I flattened them by kind of destroying the painting at the end of the painting process. They're done in a single day, and they were perfect portraits in my opinion before I wiped them with a huge paintbrush at the end of my 14-hour painting session. And what's left is a kind of liminal space between depth created by perspective and color, and a flat surface that's been kind of wiped and all the colors smeared together.
So can I ask you
Yeah,
a question about that?
please,
So when you
jump in.
were making the portraits, did you know you would be taking a big brush for the hunt?
Yeah.
That was part of the.
Yeah, it was the plan. Yeah, there was, I think, maybe 20 or 25 paintings done in that style over a year. And 12 survived the process because it's just so hard. You're getting tired at the end of the day like that, and there's like some little fleck of burnt umber or something in your brush, and it just drags all the way across the painting through the eyes, and it's gone. The painting's dead. I still have a few of them, but
So it's a real act of bravery, like putting all that time in.
yeah.
And then.
And you know, I can talk about the specific work. That idea was to see if I painted a portrait perfectly. I didn't know how to paint portraits before I started that project, so I was going to teach myself to paint portraits, and then I was going to push them through likeness into iconography. That's what I was looking for, and that's why I chose villains and archetypes from like movies, you know, mainstream movies, and the two on this side are extras from Batman and I think Hotel Rwanda, and then there's Anthony Hopkins. It's very obvious. Yeah, I wanted to see if I blurred it enough, if I destroyed it enough, if you would just see the character, the shell of the character, and not the actor, maybe, or maybe just the archetype. That's that idea. This is different. So it's similar in the sense of like a reductive process, like how much can I take away and still have it be interesting, but this is, to me, it's kind of fascinating because there's not a lot there, and yet it keeps drawing me in, and I know a few people in this room already have said like, there's something like some pull to it, and it's hard to say what exactly it is. So what am I painting a portrait of? Is it like, is the jacket coming off, or is it going on? Is that a man or a woman? Are they crying? Are they looking down? Like what is happening? There's enough suggestion there of these kinds of clues of possibility, and yet none of that is explicitly explained. It's not intentionally in there. So the challenge in painting something like that is like, how do I show the weight in your shoulders just from the pattern of the coat? Like, how do I make you know how thick that coat is, and where her arms are if you can't see her elbows? These kinds of things. Like really trying to refine the process in painting, but also in looking, so that when you're looking at something, you're asking yourself these questions. There's some sort of mystery maybe that's unfolding that you're not quite sure. You know, maybe you'll figure it out, maybe you'll never figure it out. Like I do tell all my students as often as possible to like leave mystery in the work. Like it has to be there to hold the viewer back in over and over again repeatedly. Question.
What about the animals on the side? The animals.
Yeah, well, okay, so that was like a little bit of another bit of an in-joke for me, because I wanted her to be wearing an animal print and looking at a wallpaper print of the same animal.
Okay.
And I wanted to kind of like create a space that's a bit loaded in that sense, right? Like it's not just some neutral pattern wallpaper in the background. There's a dialogue going on and a little wink, there's a little bit of humor creeping in my work. Whoa, crazy. Like the older stuff was really in
You
your
don't
face.
notice it right away. I see the coat and her hair, and then I see the animals after.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Like, what is she looking at? What a wall, basically.
yeah.
One thing I find really fascinating about that painting, and it's such a small detail, but I have to ask you about it. So, like it has a kind of sense of unreality, like you know, is it a tree or it's not clear, but then there's this area that's so sharp.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, this is real. Like I feel like I can touch it. And I'm just really intrigued. As soon as I get close, I get this feeling it's real.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, is that intentional?
It's,
I mean, of course.
Yeah, it's definitely intentional.
But and you can check this out later. You'll see that there's an area that's super sharp, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
it's almost startling, and that a small detail could be that powerful.
Yeah, it's a funny spot for me too. I saw it immediately. Like I do this process called underpainting, where I will use like an earth tone and I'll just very thinned out paint, and I'll run over the whole canvas with that and just create the light and shadow and to understand form and see if there's any errors in composition or things I need to fix. And that one spot I saw it immediately. I don't know why, because it's not in the source image, but it became like the camera focal plane. I wanted the camera to hit there, and that's the only part that's in focus, and everything is in a different kind of fall off. And the funny thing is that that's the only area of the painting that's not painted. That's canvas, that's gesso, and scratchings from the underpainting.
Yeah.
And I painted that jacket multiple times to get all those shades and tones and blurs and whatnot, but and to bring the shoulder weight and light out. But I could not go and paint that one area. I just couldn't.
That's amazing.
I mean, I mixed areas around it as high as possible, like in value, like close to white. And every time I did it, I'm like, no, it's too fake. It looks like paint. I don't want it to look like paint because I'm just going to lose that crisp. And so that's something that it's one of these things. It's like you discover a technique, and it's just like the littlest thing, and then you know, oh, if I keep diving into this, I can explore this, and I can pull out like why is it working this way, and how can I use it on a totally different scale.
And it's a paradox because the least painted area is the most realistic looking.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm focused on the hair in that, and it's odd to look at a painting and for me to be on an object, to be looking at an object like that. But it's so ambiguous, that hair. It's just, you can't, like.
Is it a wig or?
Yeah, I mean, is it a wig possible? Or has she not looked in the back, or he not looked in the back? Clearly, it's been colored, so there's money and vanity and all of those things that are involved with that. And that's what I find so mysterious. The coat adds to it. And but she's like the hair is as much of an animal as the coat is, too. It's just this very,
I like that,
it's just very powerful.
It's well, first of all, I've heard good hair days and bad hair days.
Oh,
Ambiguous hair days. So that's a new one. You coined a new term, ambiguous hair day. Yeah, just had to get that in there. I wrote that down actually. Joke one. No, you bring up an interesting point. So like these are some of the surprises that come for me when I like migrate images from film onto canvas. There's like some pollution, there's something sneaks through from the narrative or the structure of like the filmmaking process itself. So in this case, like this was the worst show. I can't even remember what it's called. I meant to look it up before I came, but it was terrible. Like I was actually getting kind of upset. But then I saw this this image and I was like, it's trying to be like sexy. It's coming across as cheap, and it looks like bad filmmaking, like a bad B movie, because the hair is fake and the jacket is like it's so cliche. And I was like, I really didn't think it was going to have any power when I painted this painting. Just like, and then somehow it just got more and more moody and sultry, and then when I discovered how to treat the hair, like hair is a tricky thing to paint, but you want to paint the clumps and the shapes and the shadows and the highlights and whatnot, but not get stuck on every strand of hair. And so it was like, how far do I go? How can I keep it soft and shiny and fake? Because it does look like silky, you know, like a silky wig.
Right.
And still get that like, you know, it's hanging as much as the coat is. It's drooping, but it's also very stylized, you know. So,
And the coat's fake too.
Yeah.
I mean, there used to be
Right.
real leopard skin coats, but now that it's just impossible. So it's fake on fake, but to me also there's some dreadful sadness there. Just I find it so very sad. I don't know why, of course, but very sad.
yeah, because she wants to be a better actor.
Yeah, well, she could try.
She wants to be Monica Vitti, but she's Cindy Sherman.
Well, let's not that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, there's a Cindy Sherman-esque quality to it, like this performance side of things. Yeah, overdone performance. It's big.
So how random is your choice of the films that you look at?
Oh, it's completely like, we all do this, I guess, on the internet, this sort of rabbit hole thing. It's like along those lines of just wandering through. Sometimes I'm like, I need to see something with wet hair. You know, where do you start?
So not at all like narrative driven.
No.
It's find a certain kind of look.
No, there's tropes that come from certain films that I can like, you know, get my scythe out and just start harvesting from action movies as if I want a certain kind of thing. Sharon Stone with one eye there, that's a courtroom drama. This one is called Planeta Bur. It's a Russian space race film from I think the 50s. It was remade a couple of times. So yeah, in that case, that one I wanted to kind of get this contemplation thing that I'm looking for in the other paintings as well, but I wanted to entrap it in a literal bubble of glass, you know, and so he's got this sort of classical pose, you know, it could be from, I don't know, 18th century portraiture or something, because it's so, you know, that particular angle of the head and everything, but then I wanted to encapsulate that in this space race, insular sort of mentality of nations and space race kind of ideas, but then also to have this internal thought process visible on his face. And you know, pop that in a fish tank and see if abstract portraiture, blurry, this, you know, things from newspapers, it goes on and on and on. I think the thing that I got from him was that the paint doesn't have to be just the paint. You can actually push through and get like other effects. If I take away information in a certain way, it's still painting, it still counts as some sort of method of storytelling if you want. For myself, I do like that idea of like working from detached subject matter, so that's why I work from films, not from people, because there's already a removal. Someone has actually taken a person and attached a story to it and put them in a box for me already, and then I can take from that box. Like, this is way more fascinating to me. My personal approach comes in the act of painting it. That's when I form an attachment, because I've spent 30, 40 hours, 6 months, whatever, on a painting. It's like this is a very human thing, I think, but like you attach meaning to something the longer you worked on it, the more you've like invested your own hand work into it. And so that builds meaning that somehow goes back into the work and then stays there. And then like I can extract from that later and see like, oh, I see what I'm doing there. I see why that painting is signifying like this thing or that thing. But it wouldn't do that if I didn't care about it. So the care goes in there. So Gerhard Richter has a kind of non-caring style of painting. Yeah. Oh, it's being recorded. I don't have to write that down.
Yeah,
It's very useful.
But it's like this, I feel like there's a sense of empathy.
Yeah.
That if I was to say like a difference.
Yeah. I got that from working on violent work too. I remember suffering as I was painting things that were violent. I remember like nightmares, bad dreams, just walking around with dark thoughts all the time. It was work. It was, why am I doing this? I want to make it beautiful. I want it to lift it up. I have to go into the quagmire first to be able to get it, come back out to where I want it to be. Yeah.
Can we revisit, when you talk about those first three paintings on there, you're talking about trying to move from a 2D or whatever to this liminal space. Can you kind of go into that a little bit more?
Sure, yeah. Back then I had a word for it, and it was like slippage. I was wondering if I could put my skill to the test to teach myself portraiture, but if I could make it so the painting didn't rest when it was finished. So it's shifting, it's moving. It's totally like ridiculous, noble idea to try to see if I could do that, but it does work, and I think there's a really simple answer for that, and it's like the action of that arm is in the painting. This is not completely my idea, because I just realized where it came from, but there's, in studying photography, I became very aware that like a photograph lives in the moment that it was taken in the like 1/60th of a second. That's where a photograph lives. Paintings live in the time that the hand took to paint it. They've done studies with like Rembrandt in a museum, Rembrandt paintings with a camera sort of mounted behind it, and they can track like the eye as it moves around a painting, and it's like this, it follows the hand, the mark of the hand, even if you don't see it necessarily. So time exists in a painting differently than it does in a photograph, and when you paint a photograph the way I do, it's like, can I extend the time and hopefully trap the viewer to look at something longer than like what Instagram kind of next. Yeah, yours.
I've been trying to figure out why your work is so disturbing.
I love it when you ask me questions.
And like, there's just something about it that messes with like general frame of reference when I'm looking at images. And I wonder, I would think about this idea of the uncanny valley,
Yeah.
right? Where you have an animation, if it gets too close to real action and motion, people hate it. Like there's something in us that really resists that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so when a cinematographer is choosing an image, like the image that we choose, the only sense of three dimensions is the choice of focus, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a very deliberate idea, and we're so surrounded by images in our lives that singular focus becomes just kind of natural.
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't think about it, and
Right.
we're always kind of using it's kind of taking on the eye of the cinematographer
Yeah.
when we're looking at it.
You mean like the focal point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in this work, like you mess with that focal point,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know. When I look at something, like it's hard to know where to move the eye. Like there's some kind of discord there
Yeah.
in a way that is very different from the image that you started with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know if you have some thoughts about it.
Yeah, no, it's a couple thoughts. Like one is that, well, we talked about this in class quite a bit too. It's like if you start with a source image, everything's in focus. Like how do you begin to make that interesting? You have to start like removing detail, right? So push, like get clear out what are power lines and shadows and whatever your source might be. But this is kind of similar, I think. It's like, maybe back to the Rembrandt science experiment thing, but it's like I'm removing detail and adding like sort of passages for your eye to go through, like to find focus and then lose it, and then as color comes forward and backward, like proportion and perspective does the same thing. So there is a kind of like snaking, meandering optics going on. And this is, again, like this, it's not monocular or binocular, right? It's somewhere in the middle is what I'm aiming for. So I want you to kind of float in and out. And if that's disconcerting or a little bit queasy making or something, like that's, I hadn't thought of that before, but it could be interesting. Like that might be the disturbing factor, or the subject matter, the dark backgrounds and this light. I mean, there's lots of ways that it can be read in disturbing modes.
Like electrical or round
Yeah,
figure.
yeah.
It's
I guess there's like, it's that balance though. It's like I want to be comfortable enough that you want to keep looking and lush enough, but I don't want to just sort of pander to a pleasant looking experience. I refuse to do that. It's also probably a thing that I got from Germany. Yeah, I don't know. It's the camera is so powerful. It's more and more powerful all the time, and I want to do battle against it. I want
Well,
to
it's
make,
so unreal.
yeah,
Like that's not how we see things.
yeah. It's absolutely a lie. It really is. There's,
But you,
yeah,
I was just gonna say, you have a double lie going on. There's the lie of the photograph, and then it's an actor.
Yep.
Like, you know that.
Yeah.
But I may not know that.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you have it in an artist statement or something. But that's like a double thing to reckon with. That person is acting, oh, my initial response is wrong
Mhm.
because she's performing something. What do I make of that? It's really a lot to
Yeah.
take in. Maybe that's the answer to the portrait. You know, like the portrait makes no sense anymore in its classical sense because we see so much.
Yeah.
So someone acting a behavior.
It's interesting. I mean, it's a double lie. I love that. Absolutely. And then it's a lie again because it's back on canvas. It's like, yeah, and it's embellished. And why would anyone spend so much time painting something that's makes you uncomfortable, or causes these uneasy feelings? Like, what's the point?
And a few of them they're mostly extras.
Yeah.
They're characters, so like on the sign, you don't even pay attention.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I think there are a lot of dichotomies in your work, like maybe because your training is both in photography and in painting. But this new work, I see you're straddling another line and you're painting a tactile sense. Like there's the velvety background and the fur and the hair.
Yeah.
When that comes across photographically.
Yeah.
Or emotionally, it does both things. So
Yeah.
I would like to ask you about the artists that inspire you. Can you name 2 or 3?
Yeah, I mean, right now, it goes in phases, I think, but right now it's Michael Borman's, he's a Belgian painter, yeah, and he has this, like, real sense of mystery in his work. It's like there's these questions and this oddness, bizarre cropping, strange treatments, like lights coming out of the eye, or like sleeves are joined into a uniform shape or something like that. His work's great. Yeah, I mean, Richter obviously could go through that, but then I don't know. I'm not really looking to painting. I'm looking to like media. And it's like the detritus, like garbage of media that's really attractive to me. That's like the garbage dump I'm rooting around in. It's fascinating. Because like for that reason, it's like I want things to import that I didn't expect. I want like things to come through the whatever image I chose. I don't even know why sometimes I choose an image, but it's like it sticks in my head, and then as I'm working on it, I figure out like, oh well, this is what's coming across. This is something I didn't even see before. the eye is funny that way. Like I remember painting something years ago, 2009, and it was like a really tiny half-tone image, so it's all dots, and I scanned it and blew it up so I could see it, and I started painting it on a canvas, and it was like, I don't know, 3 days into it before I realized there were eyes in it and they were open, and I didn't know what I was painting. Like I didn't know that those were even there when I was painting it. And it's the more you look at it. So, you know, maybe that's an extreme example, but something comes through and it like lodges in your mind, and then you figure it out. Yeah.
Exactly what I was thinking. So, like, it really depends. So, the mood you're in, the lighting, how many people are in the room, how you're looking at the painting, right? And then it's like, do I need to know about all the other process, really? Which is important to know, but then, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many layers. So it's like, okay, it's done by film. How many films are you watching? Where, you know what I mean? That's cool too. But it's almost like, at what stage am I going to look at the painting at? Is it going to, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
there's lightning surround side. I'm the only one in the room looking at it.
Yeah.
I see it like that way. It affects me that way.
Yeah.
Or in a group of people, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so beautiful that the different ways you can interpret a painting, depending on how you feel, your emotions, or knowing the history of the artist and all the process behind that,
And then seeing the artist in a
Exactly.
seaside jacket.
right?
How
Which
does
is a bit
that
of,
change the interpretation?
maybe there's a bit more pressure too, right? She's right there, so I don't know.
No,
Is there
I'm
pressure? Like,
really, I think this is a really important point. Like, I need to, as a painter, I have to control so many things, but there's also this like release of control, because I want it to speak for itself. It's fine to stand here and explain everything. You know, I can go into technical detail or my conceptual ideas or whatever, but the painting needs to like have its own life and speak for itself. And I can't take like full ownership of that, because I had no idea that painting was going to have a voice when I started it. In fact, I thought the opposite, the complete opposite. And even in its really initial stage, I was like, there's something here that I just didn't see on the screen or in the print, or like all the different versions that led up to it.
And then it changed when you saw it here.
And then it changes again.
Yeah.
And it will change in,
it's continually changing.
it'll change in a museum, it'll change in a house, it'll change. That's the thing that I'm like really addicted to, is like that shifty, that's the slippage thing. It's like, oh, the thing's vibrating, the thing's moving. And all I did was like put all the variables in the air and like see what sticks, but
So who is in the ultimate control of the painting eventually?
yeah,
It's just,
no one.
And
you've
the
done
pho-
your work and let it go.
Yeah,
And a photograph can't do those things.
no, and neither can the film. Like the scene in the film is passive,
Yeah.
so you're not absorbing the meaning of this particular like millisecond in this film. I mean, I don't know, maybe 6 images on the front side and the back side of that didn't have the power of this at all. And it's like click, 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 like take as many shots as I can in a second of film. One thing I just will mention is the odd duck down at the end. I'm sort of like a bit uncomfortable with that here, but it wasn't clear until maybe last night today why it's here. But maybe it's a good way of wrapping up too, I don't know. But the way that I see future paintings is by taking weird risks in the studio in the moment, and I do not understand what they mean, but I'm learning as I get more experienced in my painting, this is like 20 years now or whatever, I'm learning to leave those odd, loose threads. Like I used, Mark's here, but I used the analogy of like a Persian rug. You know, there's always a couple of threads sticking out the end, and I need those. I need them in the individual paintings whenever possible, but I also need it in terms of like a series, like moving forward, continuing down the line. So there's threads from a few older paintings and a few that are still to come in that work, and it's that discomfort that feeds me, and I really don't mind like showing that. Like here's the thing that isn't fully resolved. They don't always work out. That's gonna mutate and evolve like 10 more times before it becomes whatever the thing is that
It
it
feels
is.
like that out of all paintings, that one actually feels really fun.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, it's like playful, like you know,
Yeah.
she's dressed in the military, and it was like this fanciful jeep pattern.
Yeah, I mean, the direct relation is that one was first, and the green one there is after, well after, like months after, and so it's the one around the corner with the helmet. So yeah, I needed that one to get to those ones. It's like that. And even now, I'm like, oh, that's making me uncomfortable. But it's good, right? Yeah. I mean, look at it. Look at
Okay, where did you get the jacket?
I
I know
bought it
everyone's
from
dying to know.
two lovely Ukrainian ladies. Well, I would say lovely, but they're a little bit bossy. You know, the secondhand shop at London Drugs in that plaza.
Oh,
in
yeah.
Toronto. Yeah, a little pushy.
Yeah.
But, you know, got a discount.
There's
Getting my money's worth out of it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I was just gonna make a comment when you answered my question too, and maybe for others, is that as a viewer, you draw us into being either uncomfortable or at least curious and wonder. You know, it's not a passive experience you're having, so I think you did a good job of doing that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, thanks, Dylan. That was fantastic.
Thanks for coming, everybody. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Awesome audience.
It's tiring, I know. That's why I remind you. We can do that anymore. It's my handshake. It's tiring.